Hey guys, TriggerMeister here. Today I'm making a video of how to make a bullet collator. So as you can see, I already have the Mr. Bullet Feeder and it is attached to my 1050 with the auto drive. But the thing I don't like about Mr. Bullet Feeder is that it's awfully small, and right now I'm reloading 40s. In particular the 200 grain 40s, so it just feels like I'm overloading the Mr. Bullet Feeder, and I generally try to do 100 at a time. So I want a bullet feeder that is a little bit larger, so this is what we're gonna do. Okay, so I picked up from ZoroTools.com, I believe it is, some HDPE half-inch sheets, and they were a little less than 10 bucks a sheet. And then I have a motor you can find on eBay or Amazon or various other sources, or you can actually buy these, I believe, directly from Mr. Bullet Feeder. I got mine because the motor on my Mr. Bullet Feeder broke, and it took so long to get the replacement that I ended up ordering a new motor and replacing the one on Mr. Bullet Feeder, and then eventually, when I really wasn't even expecting it, that thing finally showed up. Some excuse about manufacturing delay. So, and here is some Lexan or plexiglass, and that's going to be the shroud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use actually my my mill drill lathe device to cut out the circle. So I'm going to punch a hole right where the X is, then 8.5 inches out. I'm going to run that circle around, and then I'm going to cut out that square, and then the plexiglass will go around this outer edge right here. You know, if you don't have a mill or anything of that nature, I have previous videos out there where I show you how you can do it with just a regular drill press and you know, an end mill, or you know, or a router bit or something of that nature. So this stuff cuts actually quite nicely. You don't really need a mill to cut it. So stay tuned on how to make a bullet collator. Alright, the next step here, I already drilled a hole through the center where I had that X marked, and then I put a bolt through there with a couple of washers, and I clamped that in here. So if you're using a drill press, you basically have to, what I did previously, I used the 2x4, drilled a hole, put a bolt through the 2x4, and then I clamped a 2x4 on the platform. So, as I said previously, check out my previous videos. It's not that hard to do. So, here we go. Alright, I'm going to pause the video and so I can have both hands free. Alright, I just, this probably took like a couple of minutes. And here you can see where the circle is cut now. And the next step is to pull this back out. I'm gonna put a little piece at the bottom of this so I can actually fix it now in the vise, so I can cut the rest of it out. So you only need the pivot point to actually cut the circle, and then the rest of it can all be done with it in a fixed position. Alright, so I have a couple of support holes drilled. I have a piece of wood ready so I can chuck it up. But before I actually do that, what I did is I laid out where everything should go. So here's the knocker, or what I call it, and essentially what it does, it hits the bullets to make sure that they are in the shell plate properly. Then I'm going to mill this down about a 1/2 inch. That's kind of an optional step. If you plan on using it for different calibers, you might want to do that. So you can swap out the plates that you put in here. So depending on if you have a flat point, a round nose, or whatnot, that's going to dictate what type of plate you need to use. So if it's nose down, that it then drives it outward. Here's the flipper. So this is where the bullet will ride up and get flipped over if it's incorrect. And last but not least, we have the drop hole. So this is where the bullets will drop down into the bullet seating, not seating die, but the bullet feeder die. So originally I was going to cut it square, but now I think I'm actually going to chuck it back up on that axis right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another circular cut and cut it along that line instead. I think it's another step, but I think it'll look better that way. So stay tuned. Okay, so I cut this in a circle, as I said, and I mounted it on a little piece of wood, put some drywall screws through the top, chucked it back up, and the next step is to mill out this pocket that plate will ride in, that determines which bullet to flip and which bullet to keep upright. So, coming up. Alright, sorry I didn't stop between the last step, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things real quick. So I made out of cardboard basically, no, not a form, but a layout that allowed me to lay out these holes accurately, and then I drilled a hole with a 3/16 bit, and then I used a 1/2 inch end mill to recess it. So that's so the nuts can fit in here that go on the ends of these screws here. And then I also used that same 3/16 drill bits, and I elongated this hole so this piece will fit through it. On the other Mr. Bullet Feeder, they basically just made a big hole, but in order to keep it center, I wanted to keep that center hole in there. So then at the same time, use the same 3/16 bit, drill this hole for the knocker, and then with the 1/2 inch end mill, as you can see it right here, I knocked a hole through here, through this hole, or through here, and this is for the bullet dropper. So I'm going to use a step drill to open this up a little bit so a PVC pipe can fit in there snugly. It looks like we're getting somewhere here, so stay tuned. Alright, so I abandoned the idea of the plexiglass. As you can see here, I heated it with a heat gun. What happened, of course, I couldn't get a nice bend on it. I've been plexiglass before, but it was just too hard. It was too much. The radius was just too much. I probably would have had to heat it in the oven and then try to shape it over a circular object. So I found this beautiful blue, this was a bucket actually from Menards. They had a blue one, and of course that matches the Dylan color very well. So then I drilled a couple holes, put some screws. You can see the reflection of the screws through the HDPE. Mounted the motor, and here's the inside. So next thing, I'm gonna have to actually cut the the shell plate for it. All right, so here I cut the second piece of HDPE in a circular cut. It's I think 20 or 25 thou under the radius of the base plate, so it can fit inside there. And here I have a 7/16 end mill chucked up, and that's for a 40 caliber. One thing that I've noticed is that it'll spin relatively easy when you're doing this. So I took a clamp and another clamp and I tighten it so it won't spin on me. And now I'm gonna put, well, a bunch of holes all over in the same spot all around. I have my vise locked. Both ways are locked, the X and the Y axis. And when I come back, hopefully I'll have a bunch of holes drilled. All right, so the holes are all drilled. I ended up settling on a 300 thousandths gap between the two holes. And the cool thing is, of course, or a little tip here, you can see a little black mark that I put underneath here. So once you get enough holes drilled and you get a flat surface, you can make a mark, and then you can use an object. I use a Sharpie that I actually use to make the mark with. And so you can actually index it, keep indexing it to the next mark. So that'll save you quite a bit of time from having to measure between each of the holes. So, all right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out. The critical aspect of this whole thing is to make sure that these holes are all drilled the same distance from the center. So the slot out here is less critical, so I'm just going to actually take a carpet knife and I'm going to carve these out here. This material is fairly soft, so with a sharp carpet knife it shouldn't be an issue. Alright, sorry I did not take video of lots of steps in between getting to this point, so let me real quick just show you guys what I made. And I kind of realized that unless you have certain equipment or access to somebody that has certain equipment, it's kind of hard to be able to duplicate what I have here. So I showed you guys how I drill the holes. I ended up using Dremel and a router bit to and a carpet knife to clear out the spaces for the shell plate. And then I made that flipper plate, that aluminum piece that's sticking out right here, and then the knocker. Let me show you guys a trick that I did with the knocker. All right, I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but essentially what I have here is I'm trying to pull that bullet out. Here, let's see if I can. There you go. You see that little spring in there? That, instead of using one of those coiled up springs that activates the knocker, I just drilled a hole in the back here, just not all the way through. And then I put a spring in there that basically pushes against the plastic of that bucket that I cut up. Let's see here, what else? There is the flipper. I ended up using a 200 thousandths plate, aluminum plate. But if you're going to do this, I would recommend at least going 1/4 inch. So the further the bullet drops when it's the wrong way, the better off you are. So I ended up getting really close to the, I probably went at least 160 thousandths. So there's not a whole lot left between the area I milled out and the plate. Let's see. Yeah, I think you guys all saw that earlier. I ended up drilling through the case feeder holder, and then I used really old car phone arm. I'm sure that they're still out there. Probably find them at a flea market. The nice thing is you can adjust it because it's on a ball there, so you can adjust it in various directions. Then this is not a PVC pipe. I forget what kind of, I don't know. I don't think it's PEX, but anyways, this is a pipe that heats up when you put a heat gun or hair dryer to it. I threw in a couple of 45 bullets so I wouldn't kink it, and then I heated it up and kept bending it until I got it right to that spot. So I kind of like it over here, so it's fairly up and down, so it doesn't put a whole lot of stress on the bullet dropper. So then I have these, of course, that provide that additional tension so you don't drop multiple bullets at once. The wiring I don't have done yet. I'm just going to do that off video. If you got this far, I'm pretty sure you can figure out the wiring. I ended up using a piece from Mr. Bulletfeeder, so I gotta make another one for the actual Mr. Bulletfeeder that I have. But I think this is it. So here, I'll show you guys. I'll let it run real quick. Same all in flip. And as you can see, there's a ton of bullets in here. So I'm pretty sure that's 100 plus at this point. There's 32 cutouts. So in 2 rotations, you're almost at 100 bullets. So anyways, if you have any questions, leave a comment below, and hope you enjoyed this video.